Let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're taking the ancient, deeply profound narrative of Prophet Nu, also known as Noah, and treating it as a structured case study. We're going to extract the real historical and moral lessons from a story you probably think you already know inside and out. But trust me, when we break it down analytically, there is an incredible depth here. Because this isn't just a story about a big boat and some animals. It's a profound warning, and it's one that literally echoes through time. So here's our agenda for today's lesson. We're going to cover 1. A wealthy world lost. 2. Centuries of patient warning. 3. Building the divine blueprint. 4. Waves like towering mountains. 5. Key moral lessons learned. And finally, 6. Questions for discussion.
Part 1. A wealthy world lost. To really grasp the sheer magnitude of Noah's mission, we first need to understand his environment.
Historical texts draw a fascinating parallel between the absolute luxury of Nuh's era and the potential pitfalls we see in modern societies. You see, Nuh didn't live among chaotic, unthinking monsters. He lived among a society that was highly intelligent, incredibly capable, and basically bathed in wealth. But they had one fatal flaw. They were entirely spiritually bankrupt. They were bowing down to carved stone statues with names like Wad, Suah, Yahuth, Yauk, and Nazar. Now think about the modern parallel here. It is a stark reminder for us that any society placing its worldly blessings and luxury above its creator is risking that exact same spiritual emptiness. Noah wasn't just fighting a simple disagreement over beliefs. He was going up against a deeply entrenched system of elite control. The elites of his time had actively twisted religion. They were literally telling the common people to never, ever abandon their gods, purposely weaponizing faith for mass manipulation. By keeping the working class spiritually enslaved to these statues, those leaders could just freely hoard the society's immense wealth without any pushback.
Part 2. Centuries of Patient Mourning. Let's see how Nuh responds to this deeply corrupt, elite-controlled machine over an unimaginable span of time.
950. Just let that number sink in for a second. For 950 years, Noah stood completely alone against the tide of an entire civilization. Over centuries, he literally tried everything to break through to them. He preached at the top of his lungs in public squares, he whispered to them privately in their homes, he appealed to their logic, he pleaded with their emotions, and he warned them of the divine consequences.
This quote brilliantly illustrates his approach. As this verse from the Quran shows, Nuh wasn't just talking about the afterlife, right? He actually promised them that monotheism was the key to solving their immediate worldly problems. He told them, look, if you just ask for forgiveness, the sky is going to bring you rain, your wealth will increase, and your gardens and rivers will flourish. He directly connected their spiritual health to their worldly prosperity. And yet, tragically, his warnings were met with nothing but relentless mockery, laughter, and thrown stones.
Part 3. Building the divine blueprint. When the gene pool of faith was finally and entirely cut off, and God revealed to Nuh that absolutely no one else would ever believe, a divine reset was decreed. So, God commands Noah to build an ark. But there's a highly illogical first directive here. Build it in the middle of a desert, on completely dry land. You can only imagine the social scene this created. The elites must have been howling with laughter as this old prophet suddenly takes up carpentry miles away from any ocean. But Noah just kept hammering those planks under God's watchful eyes until the prophesied sign finally arrived, the Tanur. Scholars interpret this as an oven inside a stone that suddenly began gushing with water. Once that volcano of water erupted, step 3 was a go. It was time to load the passengers and the animals in pairs. Part 4. Waves like towering mountains. The calm of those centuries was completely shattered the moment that divine command was fully executed. This wasn't just a heavy rainstorm. The destruction was a total, cataclysmic attack coming from both above and below. The gates of the sky opened up with incomprehensible torrents of water, while the earth literally burst open with violent springs. These two waters, the deluge from the sky and the eruption from the earth, met exactly as decreed, swallowing absolutely everything in their path. And right in the middle of this terrifying chaos is, without a doubt, the most heartbreaking moment of the entire narrative. A father's sheer instinct cries out against the roaring storm. Noah spots his own son, who was a disbeliever at heart, desperately trying to flee the rising water. Screaming from the deck of this moving ark over the howling wind, Noah begs his son to come aboard. But look at the stark contrast between them.
The son replies with pure arrogance, placing his absolute trust in a physical, worldly mountain to save him from the flood. Nu counters with the ultimate divine reality. No physical object can protect you from the decree of God, and the physical mountains completely failed. A massive wave, which the Quran describes as being literally like a mountain itself, crashed down, separating the father and son forever. Part 5. Key moral lessons learned. After the devastating waters finally receded, commanded by God to be swallowed back by the earth, the ark came to rest on Mount Judy. Humanity was given a second chance, a new covenant. So let's break down the core lessons from this unbelievable event. There's a profound paradox we need to uncover here. Think about water for a second. It's usually this pure source of life, right? It's literally what we need to survive. But because those people worshipped their luxury, that very source of life became the instrument of their total destruction. We also see the ultimate masterclass in patience against 950 years of mockery. We learn the absolute necessity of trusting God's plan, even when building a massive ship in a desert defies all human logic. And critically, we see that faith is a completely individual choice. It cannot be inherited. It proves that even a prophet's own flesh and blood can tragically choose the wrong path. Part 6. Questions for discussion. To wrap up our explainer today, let's transition into some classroom-style discussion prompts. I really want you to actively reflect on how this ancient case study applies to the way we think and live today. First, consider the socioeconomic dynamics we mapped out earlier. Think critically about how the elites didn't just ignore religion, they actively manipulated it. By keeping the common people hyper-focused on stone idols, how did that serve the elites' agenda to completely control resources and maintain their own luxurious lifestyles? Next, reflect on the sun's arrogance. To an unspiritual mind, a giant, immovable stone mountain seems vastly safer than a wooden boat in a massive storm, right? What does his fatal decision teach us about relying purely on worldly logic when faced with divine realities? And what does it say about the painful truth that spiritual salvation isn't just some family heirloom you can pass down? Think back to that parallel we drew earlier between Nuh's era and today. If the world around us is increasingly obsessed with material wealth and superficial luxury, what practical, everyday steps can a person take to build an internal ark of truth and steadfastness? This right here is the paradox of the flood. Let this narrative remind you that relying solely on your worldly blessings, your wealth, your intellect, your technology, while entirely forgetting the ultimate source of those blessings, can very quickly become the exact thing that drowns your faith. I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder as you navigate the inevitable floods and storms of your own life. Are you steadily preparing your heart and your mind right now, before the crisis even hits? Be like the ark, steady, purposeful, and ready for the calm after the storm. Keep seeking knowledge, keep questioning, and we'll see you in the next explainer.